Folks, so I'm here in Red Square. Just behind me here, I'll show you. That's the mausoleum where Vladimir Lenin is buried. The Kremlin is also right over there. There's no better place to say what I'm about to say, okay? All my life, as someone living in the United States, I've just heard an endless amount of garbage when it comes to the subject of communism. People say, oh, communism has failed everywhere it's ever been tried. Oh, communism produces nothing but poverty. Communism produces nothing but gulags. This is all complete and utter nonsense. You can be critical of the Soviet Union. You can admit that they had problems, that the problems of their system eventually led to their downfall. But you can't say that it was a failure. I'm standing here in Russia. At this point, Russia is a world industrial power. It sells more oil on the international markets and more natural gas than most other countries on the planet. It's fully electrified. Every part of the country has electricity, running water. It didn't used to be that way. When the Russian Revolution happened in 1917, most of this country was deeply, deeply poor. 65% illiteracy. Most of the country didn't have running water or electricity. And then they got it. Why? Because of Stalin's 5-year plans. The country was rapidly transformed with the program of socialist industrialization. In the 5-year plans from 1928 to the mid-1930s, you saw a country that had previously been an agrarian feudal society transformed into a society where people had running water and electricity and housing and education and healthcare. You saw a very, very poor country become a modern country almost overnight. At that time in the 1930s, most of the planet was having a Great Depression. But the Soviet Union found itself becoming the society that produced more steel than any other country in the world, produced more tractors than any other country in the world. And then the Nazis invaded, and 20 to 26 million people lost their lives in the fight to defend what they had won in the Russian Revolution. And the Soviet people fought and defeated the German invaders, a major Western country that had invaded them. They defeated it. So everything that we think we know about communism in the United States is pretty much wrong. We have it completely wrong. And it gets even more interesting because people say, oh, well, Russia, they got free in the 1990s. That's what we're told, right? Finally they had freedom in the 1990s. The 1990s was a very, very dark period in Russia's history. You want to look at what went on in the 1990s, that's where there was a huge rate of drug addiction, huge rate of suicide in this country, mass unemployment, people lost their life savings. There was just a huge amount of suffering. And the economy got back into order really around the year 2000 when Putin came in and he utilized oil and natural gas and put them under public control and transformed Rosneft and Gazprom, the oil and natural gas companies controlled by the government, into a way to centralize the economy. And at this point, Russia's economy has recovered and they've begun to reindustrialize, and they've become once again a strong and powerful country in which people are not suffering in mass. And that was mainly done through public control of oil and natural gas. So everything you think you know about communism is just plain wrong. And I want to say also that the United States, the communists in the Soviet Union, they had a very good impact on U.S. society. If it wasn't for the communists who led the labor unions in the 1930s and fought against capitalism, we wouldn't have weekends in the United States. We wouldn't have Social Security and unemployment insurance. Roosevelt very much depended on a base of allies, many of which were in the Communist Party. And let's also be clear that the Soviet Union played a huge role in promoting the black freedom struggle in the United States. Emmett Till, when he was lynched, the Soviet Union sent the picture of his body all over the world. The Soviet Union took a petition to the United Nations called We Charge Genocide, exposing the horrors of racism in the United States. So I think that the actual history of communism, despite, yes, there were certainly flaws in the Soviet system, and that's ultimately why it collapsed, and China, Venezuela, other countries have obviously adjusted their socialism and are not trying to copy the Soviet model because it was flawed in many ways. But if you look at what was achieved when socialism existed in the USSR, there was a huge rate of success, and many, many lives were transformed. A country became a world power. People got a rising standard of living. Great things were achieved. And so everything we think we know about communism in the USA, it's wrong. And I'm here in Red Square in modern Russia, the living proof that there is an alternative to capitalism.